You don't think it points the very clear lesson that bad guys have all the fun? We're talking Blackadder's Christmas Carol. Hit it. It was 1988. Rain Man was the highest grossing film. Prince Charles escaped an avalanche in Switzerland. UK laws were changed to allow pubs to stay open all day, and Ebenezer Blackadder was visited by a spirit with unforeseen consequences. I'm your host, Jerry D, with another episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, we got it covered. Now, joining me is a very special guest. You'll know him as the host of Merry Britsmas podcast, Adam Parker. Adam, how's it going?
It's great. Yeah, really, really good. It's just turned a bit chilly here in the UK, which is quite nice. I can feel those Burr months really cooling down. It makes me feel a lot more festive.
That's way cool, because here it's still been in like the 80s and 90s, and then today, out of all the days, so it's perfect. It was actually in the 60s, and so it's just wonderful.
A little chill, yeah. It just feels so much more Christmassy as soon as the weather gets a bit cooler. Put a jumper on, a cup of tea. Start to think about decorating.
Exactly, yeah. So my son and I went to look this morning. I had some father-son time with him when we went to look at some Hallmark ornaments and things like that. And so he already wants me to put the tree up. And well, normally I'd say yes. My wife, unfortunately, has a very strict not until day after Thanksgiving rule. So
yeah, same here.
Yeah, not as fun, but you got to please the wife. So
exactly. Yeah. I do have a classroom as well. I'm a teacher, and I start putting Christmas stuff out pretty early there, and nice. The kids are quite excited about it. So, and my wife's not there to tell me not to do
it. There you go. See, and I'm lucky I get to work at a Christmas store. So I see Christmas like all year round.
All year round. Yeah.
What do you teach, by the way?
English, which means that Christmas Carol is every year for me a teaching subject, which is brilliant.
Nice. Well, I'm sure you can appreciate this variation on a theme of a Christmas Carol here.
Yeah, it's interesting to see something different when you're so used to studying the original text every year and watching the original versions every year. And then when you get something different, it is something a bit unique and a bit exciting, I suppose.
It is. Well, and speaking of, you've been doing this this versions of Christmas Carol and Marley's countdown kind of thing, and or battle royale. I don't know how you want to count it, but
yeah, I think the word I'm using is a World Cup of
World Cup. That's what it is.
Very British thing, yeah. A World Cup voting of the Marleys from Christmas Carol, where people can vote on Twitter for their favourite Marley, going back to 1930s all the way through to the modern day. Cartoons, puppets, real life voices. Any interesting Marley is entered into the competition, and then we'll see what the winner is.
Right on. Well, I can't wait to vote for Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, I think that might be right towards the very end, Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, it's either them or Goofy. I'm not sure which one I like best. But today, there's not quite a Marley in this version that we're talking about. We're talking Blackadder's Christmas Carol. And this one is definitely, like you said, it's different. It's something unusual, and I really, really enjoyed it. I guess the last few years, I started getting into Blackadder, but really only the first series. I haven't been able to catch the rest. But now that I know that Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie are in the rest, I'm excited to catch up with those, because those are some of my favorite actors. I mean, House, I love House. I watched that show religiously back when it first aired, and every once in a while I'll put one of those on and just kind of catch up with Hugh Laurie, and I mean it's great, and he's a great musician as well too. But
yeah, very talented guy, and yeah, I was a big fan of House, and there's some very good Christmas episodes of House as well.
There really are, yeah. I think the Tis the Podcast guys covered some of those.
Yeah,
yeah, I love Hugh Laurie. Stephen Fry is always funny, and he's really intelligent as well. So the fact that he's Lord Melchett actually it plays very well, at least for me. You know, I can see him as being the high-ranking official that's actually a smart advisor and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a national treasure here in Britain. Stephen Fry. He for many years he had QI. I don't know if you know of QI, but it's a sort of
quiz show.
Quiz show, with celebrity comedians, and it's about what is interesting. So it's very unusual facts, and he's the host of, or he was the host of that for about a decade, I think, and some very good Christmas episodes there as well. But it's just a really interesting, and it made him seem like the wisest man on earth, even though it's all scripted, I'm sure. But it just gave him this aura of wisdom, and he became this sort of national treasure basically over the last sort of 10 years in Britain.
Well, he's even written some books on like Greek mythology and things like that. And so,
he's actually a clever guy.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, very, very impressive guy. And of course, Rowan Atkinson. And I think over here in the States, most of us know him just as Mr. Bean, which is kind of the same, because he really is a funny guy. I remember when he came out on, I think it was the Graham Norton show. And he was talking about someone trying to recognize him, and and he kept saying, "No, I am that guy. That's me." And the guy that he was talking to didn't believe him. He's like, "No."
Oh, really?
It's like, you should do impersonations of him, and I bet you can make a lot of money.
You look so much like him.
But he really is a great comedian, and so it's kind of funny to actually hear him speak, at least from an American perspective, because we're so used to just Mr. Bean. But he really is a great actor and quite a comedian.
I think the same for me. As a kid, it was Mr. Bean was how I knew him, because as a kid, I didn't watch Blackadder. I watched Mr. Bean.
Right.
And then it wasn't until I was a bit older, till I was probably a teenager, where I started to watch a bit of Blackadder. Mainly the fourth series I watched originally, I think, the wartime.
The World War One. Yeah.
World War One. Yeah. And then saw him as, a very interesting and still very funny actor, but on a completely different level from Mr. Bean.
Yeah. Mr. Bean, it's definitely something else. I tried showing it to my wife, and she didn't get it. But my kids love it.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think if you watch it when you're young, or young at heart, maybe.
It's
just brilliant. Yeah. His facial expressions, the movements, it's slapstick at its best, I think.
I agree completely. But the series, actually, Blackadder, so it was actually began in 1983. It was kind of the brainchild of Rowan Atkinson and Richard Curtis, and they started developing this idea for a show and a sitcom while they were doing the Not the 9 o'clock news. And they wanted to kind of set themselves apart from Fawlty Towers, which has been, like, at the time, I guess, was very, at the peak of British comedy. And so they decided to do a historical comedy. And it's odd because seeing this version and then reading about the other versions, which I haven't seen yet, it's almost like the roles are switched. So in that first series, Blackadder was a little more, he was more of like the Baudrick type, where he was not very clever, and people kind of took advantage of him. And, Baudrick was the one that was kind of running things behind the scenes kind of a guy.
Yeah.
So to see the switch, and I know that part of that was from the studio mandate, but to see that, it was a little jarring for me, but at the same time, I think it played so much better. And
I agree. Yeah. And I think, Blackadder has that sort of, or the way that Rowan Atkinson plays him has that sort of privileged overseer, the pompous know-it-all, just plays that perfectly.
Yeah, definitely very sycophantic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's shrewd, he's cunning, just everything about him. He's always trying to. I mean, you could almost say he's Machiavellian, but just doesn't always quite pull it off. But
no, always falls short at the last usually.
And I think that's what makes it work, and that's what makes it such a great comedy. In fact, I think as far as Christmas specials go, I think this was actually ranked by your Channel 4 as like the second best Christmas special on TV ever.
Yeah, it is beloved here, Blackadder, and a Blackadder Christmas Carol within itself. And I think it is as you said, it's so unique and interesting, and the characters are so well pieced together, and it's full of such iconic British actors as well. Fry and Laurie and Rowan Atkinson and a bunch of others who are just really, Miranda Richardson, Jim Broadbent, Miriam Margolyes, just actors that are so well known and so loved, I think, and cherished here, and they've gone on to such great careers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I really do love the Graham Norton Show. So whenever they're on, it's always a treat.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much Miriam Margolyes actually curses in real life,
like a sailor. Yeah.
But yeah, she was great as I believe Queen Victoria, I think she was.
Yes, as Queen Victoria. Yeah, perfectly cast as Queen Victoria there. I think she played quite a few of those sort of similar characters in the earlier Blackadder series as sort of regal leading figures, full of, again, a bit of pomp and a bit of that pomposity that goes with it, especially that sort of historical British pomp, I think is the term that I'm looking for, of somebody who thinks they're better than everyone else.
Yes.
Probably because at the time they were treated like that.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess when we talk about class systems in general, it's, when you're at the top, you're at the top. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So this version of A Christmas Carol, it really takes the story and kind of turns it on its head. And so if you want to nutshell it, I suppose you could say that Ebenezer Blackadder is the nicest man on the world, and after a visit by a spirit, he changes his ways.
Exactly.
So it really is like a flip-flop from what we're used to. And,
yeah.
Ebenezer Scrooge, of course, the skinflint, and of course, you probably could quote it by now, but, the squeezing, clutching, all that.
Squeezing, wrenching, grasping, covetous old sinner, I believe is
yes.
the quote. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, he has the 180 in Christmas Morning. And here, Blackadder, it's really the opposite. So he's put upon, everybody comes to him, they take advantage of him. And of course, at the end of it, he pretty much tells everybody, just pardon me, but to go shove it. And
I love the sort of that start, the kindness he has, and you see the taking advantage, and he's giving away everything bit by bit, and eventually losing all the stuff he had. But again, he's so upbeat and so positive about it. It's Scrooge at the end of the story. It's that Scrooge giving away everything. But as with a great piece of comedy, they completely twist it on its head and make you sort of almost pity him at the start, even though he's so kind and generous. You're sort of saying, stop giving away all your money, stop giving away the turkey.
Yeah, you're right, because they're even like calling him different names, and I think they call him sir. But it opens up, and it's really great where you hear humbug, and he's actually offering like a candy. It's like
humbug. Sweet humbug.
And of course, we're introduced right away as well to his I don't know, would you call him a sidekick or in
this it seems usually I suppose Baldrick is that sort of servant, but in this one he works in the shop, or I don't know, he just seems to hang around.
Pretty much, yeah. and so right away we see the interplay between the two, which is hilarious, because even as the kindest man in the world, he's still kind of jabs in here and there, and so I always thought that was a great bit.
I like that he picks apart the spelling of Baldrick as written a Christmas card. And it feels like me as a teacher sometimes having to read some of my students' work, and I see you've misspelt it as messy Christmas. And also with the Christmas, I think you've missed out the H and the S and the T and the M and the C. And then I think you've actually managed to spell Christmas without any of the correct letters.
And I think he even says, you mean Merry. And so then he writes in Merry, but it's like then Merry Messy Christmas.
A Merry Messy Christmas. I could sum up a few Christmases, a Merry Messy Christmas.
Oh, for sure, yeah. See, and I know exactly what you mean, because I was a band director for a few years. And but besides doing that, I also taught music theory and music history. And unfortunately, they weren't music students that I taught it to. They were just, people with no experience at all. And so basically I ended up having to kind of start from scratch. And so I ended up turning it into like a 20th century music / film music kind of course. And I remember there was a few essays here and there, a few paragraphs that, yikes. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slog sometimes. It's sometimes amusing, as messy Christmas, but sometimes it's more of a how have you done this?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, how have you gotten this far? Like we have failed you. I'm sorry, but
Yeah, I feel that way, especially with some of the older students. Bless them.
yeah, exactly. But they try their hardest.
Exactly, and that's what I'm there for, to help them.
Yeah.
Like Blackadder's there to help Baldric.
That's right. Yeah. So he kind of goes through everything, and he mentions how he has a tree.
Yeah.
And it's
or
just
a twig, I
this
believe.
tiny little twig. Yeah. And of course we get another very common inappropriate joke about size and things like that.
It is packed full of sort of rather inappropriate jokes. I sort of forgot, actually, rewatching it this year, how inappropriate a lot of the jokes were. And I always think, actually, I might show this to some of my older students potentially, and then I watch it and go, oh, maybe I can't
not.
actually show this. No, there's a lot in there that is a little bit on the dodgy side of appropriate, I think.
That's right. Yeah,
even
you don't want to get written up. Yeah.
No. Even I work in a Christian school as well, and right at the start, talking about the nativity that Baldric is putting on.
Yep.
And it is very Victorian, very British, dark humour that the baby Jesus has died, and so they get because the baby had died, and they get a dog to replace the baby Jesus. I cracked up, but I was like, I can't really show that to my class.
No, probably not in a Christian school. No. But yeah, because they mentioned that it was a nativity play performed by orphans.
Yeah.
So of course, when you think orphanages, in general. So when he passes away, it's like, okay, well that that tracks, but at the same time, then they replace him with the dog, and then he has a great line about you don't think that he would have changed the world if his first words were "woof" or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of great little lines here and there, and so
yeah,
I'm gonna admit that when we get to my section at the end where we do our impressions, I really had a hard time finding my least favorite bit, because I enjoyed this whole thing. I mean, I love Monty Python. I love, all that kind of thing. And so just in general, the British style of comedy is some of my favorite. And so I really had a difficult time to picking in.
Me too. Yeah. I got a couple in the end, which we'll talk about later, but it was tricky because, like you said, the characters are so good and the jokes are so fast and quick and, barely stops for breath, but it's hard to sort of find a bad moment in all the rush of comedy because you're laughing all the time.
Exactly. And I think I ended up picking what I did just because I could do an accent. So I'm going to apologize already. This is a preemptive apology. I'm sorry.
I'm looking forward to it.
I don't want to offend anybody. I'm just a little Hispanic boy from South Texas, so forgive me. But yeah, so as they're getting ready for Christmas, and they're talking about how much money they've made throughout the year, and so it's only, I believe, £17 and a penny,
and 1 penny, yeah,
1 penny. And right away they start getting visitors, and of course each visitor has some sort of sob story, so that the most generous man in town will help them out. So we get Mrs. Scratchit, who is talking about Tiny Tom, who is apparently not so tiny. There's a great line later on where he talks about you could use him as a houseboat or something like that.
Yeah. And I think again later on he says something along the lines of, it's not a disability if you just occasionally remember to say "ow, my leg."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Tiny Tom's supposed to be disabled, and and he has an enormous appetite or something. And anyway, so Mrs. Scratchit tries to get some money out of him, and so he's like, "Well, I have some, I'll buy some of your matches. I see you have matches there, and so." Here's £10. She's like, you don't want all of them? He's like, okay, fine. And so then there goes all of his money,
all the £17,
except for the money. Yeah, the penny. The penny's all he has left. And then we get another little boy that comes in and tries to get a penny out of him, and he does successfully. And then we get I don't even know how to describe them. It's not.
Yeah, it's sort of charity collectors, I suppose. I think they're orphans, aren't they? Those three boys.
I think so.
And then they're sort of.
Yeah, I wasn't positive, but I think.
The orphan master, I suppose, that looks after them. But I think they're described as orphans on the back of the DVD box I have. Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha.
The enormous orphans is how the DVD box describes
orphans,
them.
Yeah. Well,
he's a beadle, is what the man is known as, and I think a beadle was.
Oh, with
a
the D,
Victorian
right?
term,
Mhm.
yeah, for someone that would sort of look after the poor and needy, and especially orphans, and do fundraising, usually in a Christian um, setting of some kind.
I gotcha.
So I think that's what the character's playing.
I gotcha. And yeah, so they trick him out of giving away some of the nuts that he had, because you see him being stripped, piece by piece of like his
Yeah.
presents and all these other things. And we get to that point. He's like, "Well, at least we have these nuts here, and we can enjoy them." And well, there goes that. And
Yeah.
and then same thing. His goddaughter,
Yeah,
and he
Millicent.
had Millicent. Yeah, he had a present for Bodrick and a present for something for himself, and then something for her. And she thinks, of course, that it's like the hat and the scarf and everything are all for her.
All for her.
So she takes it, and I mean, just poor guy. Like, he's just being taken advantage of so badly.
I know, and he sort of doesn't well, he does realize it, I suppose, but he doesn't mind. He's, just giving it all away so lovingly and freely, and all these horrible, horrible people are coming into his life and taking advantage. The only person that's not horrible to him is Baldric, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. But that's cut in with the Queen and her husband, and their pomp and everything that they have going on, all their extravagance. And he's, he has 3 surprise presents for her that he ends up, she somehow tricks him into revealing what they are, which is another
one at
funny
a time.
bit.
It's a damn
every
saying.
time. Yeah.
I love Jim Broadbent so much.
I
He's
do
one
too.
of my favorite actors. I was really fortunate when I lived in London a few years ago. I saw a Christmas Carol play, a stage version.
Oh, nice.
And Jim Broadbent played Scrooge on stage. Wow. It was so good, brilliant, really innovative stagecraft. They had made it look like he was flying over London, and the ghosts coming out on levitating and all sorts of things. And he was absolutely brilliant, Jim Broadbent. He was such a good Scrooge, and again, just the ability to change between that sort of miserly. It was hard to see him as a miser actually at first, because Jim Broadbent's just such a nice, jolly man and everything you see.
Exactly.
But he did it so well, and then the transformation was brilliant as well. It was one of the best, I think, theatrical experiences I've had, and it was so Christmassy as well, of course.
Nice. Yeah, and I've always enjoyed everything he's been in. Of course, some of the more popular ones like Bridget Jones' Diary, and of course Harry Potter as Professor Slughorn. But I always thought he was really a fantastic, just phenomenal actor. And so whenever he's in something, I always kind of perk up, because I know that he's going to deliver, a powerful performance, even if it's just as, a bumbling dad or something like that. He nails it every time. So he really has a nice comedic turn here as the, as I guess, what would you call it? Not regent, or I don't know.
No, it's Prince Albert.
Prince Albert, that's what it is. Yeah, the prince.
Yeah,
because he's not technically king.
No.
Yeah. And you'll have to forgive me again. I'm just an American. I don't quite know how all that works.
Yeah, the royalty.
Yeah, but yeah.
As you said as well, with Jim Broadbent in Harry Potter, there's a lot of Harry Potter actors in here. I sort of, as I was watching it, I kept going, oh, they're in Harry Potter. Oh, they're in Harry Potter as well. I think it's just British. You watch any British show from the 80s and 90s with good actors in it, and there's going to be a handful of Harry Potter actors or performers in there.
Well, yeah, Marianne Margolyes was Professor Sprout. And then, Miranda Richardson was, Rita Skeeter, I think.
Rita Skeeter, the journalist, and you've got Robbie Coltrane.
Hagrid, yep.
Yeah, and then I know Stephen Fry didn't. He wasn't in the films, but he did the audiobooks.
He did.
I don't know if he did. Yeah, but he they were really, really successful over here, the audiobook versions, and his voice was quite closely associated with, so much that when I've taught students before and I've played them a clip of Stephen Fry in something, they've said, "Oh, that's the Harry Potter man," because when they were little, they heard the Harry Potter stories from their parents, and they heard the audiobooks and just recognized the voice.
Well, Stephen Fry is another, we briefly talked about him already, but he was another one that I didn't quite know very well until I saw him in V for Vendetta, which is a shame, because, I mean, out of all his roles, that's not really a great role, but for some reason,
it's an odd one.
that's what I remember him in. And I think the guy's name was Prospero, his character, but anyway, so that's how I learned of him. And then, of course, I went on to research him and saw him in a bunch more things. And you're right. I mean, it really is just jam-packed full of all these just great classic actors that are fantastic in everything they do. Miranda Richardson, of course.
Yeah.
Another very terrible movie that I saw her in. 'Cause for some reason, I know them all from terrible movies. Uh, Sleepy Hollow. With
Oh yeah.
yeah, she was in that one, and but since then I've gone on to see her, and she has such a range as well. I mean, like you can't find better actors. I think the
No.
thing that would have made it better if like was Ian McKellen or
Yeah.
Michael Gambon or someone was in there, but
It's amazing how they sort of can go between comedy and drama in such a. I think it's quite difficult for a lot of actors to try and make the jump between it, but a lot of these classic British actors just seem quite natural. Started off in comedy and then moved into drama, and equally at home in both.
You're right. Especially at least for American actors, it is incredibly difficult, and so you see a lot of these actors try to do comedy, and it doesn't play very well. In fact, I think when one of the critics talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger, not that he's a great actor, but he was known, of course, for like Commando and Predator and all that. And when he tried to do Jingle All the Way, I believe one person said that he had the comedic timing of a dead moose. Nice. But so eventually we get Blackadder. Ebenezer is giving away all his stuff. It's pretty much like, okay, well, he's getting ready to go to bed. He's visited.
I think he had the turkey left as well. Didn't he give the turkey away to the Queen and Prince Albert? They came around. He did.
That's what I was about to get to. He was ready for bed, but he gets visited by the Queen and Prince Albert, who are trying to, I guess, do their annual charity. Charity
going
event.
I think they said, go sort of give out to the poor and also find the nicest people in London as well, the most giving people as well.
Yes, and so they were directed to his place, and so he gets there, and of course, they're like, "Well, we're here collecting for the poor. Give us something," and he's like, "Well, I don't have any money." And then, of course, they're like, well, what about a turkey or anything? He's like, well, of course, yes. And now that you mention it, I do. And so he runs and grabs it and gives it to them. And so he has no idea who they are. Like,
no,
at least it doesn't seem like it. And so by this time, he goes back into the room and Baldric's there. And he's like, hey, by the way, while you were helping them, this spirit came in and said something about haunting you. And, by the way, but no big deal. And
yeah, that's. I was when I was trying to think of my Marleys for my World Cup of Marleys, I was like, oh, Blackadder Christmas Carol, and I realised he doesn't appear. No, he's off screen. Yeah, we just hear about Marley from next door, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's also interesting because there's only one spirit.
Yeah,
it's not like past, present, and future. It's just one guy that I guess is the embodiment of all of them. I don't know.
Yeah, we just get the Christmas spirit ghost.
Mm-hmm. Which is, again, just another twist on the classic tale. But Blackadder's getting ready for bed, and he's visited by the spirit, who's Robbie Coltrane. And he already, I hate to admit it, but he kind of looks like Hagrid already.
Yeah.
The big, oversized, beard and wig. And
large cloak sort of like outfit. And just the general big size and booming voice. It's Hagrid all over.
It's pretty much Hagrid, yeah.
Yeah. You can imagine, back when, they were casting Harry Potter, and if they'd watched any of this sort of stuff, you'd think the casting directors are like, we've got to get Robbie Coltrane. There's no one else
they probably
that can be Hagrid. Yeah.
Well, especially if it is such a beloved, property over there. I can imagine them just sitting down one Christmas thinking, you know what? He would be a great Hagrid. Just as they're watching it, But it's funny. He of course asks for a drink. He's like, well, all we have is that surgical bruise lotion. And like, oh, the good stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of those little lines in there. They're just amazing lines.
Again, he plays on that sort of a bit of a sort of, I suppose, a stereotype, maybe a racist stereotype of a drunk Scotsman is what he's sort of playing.
Yes, exactly.
With his caricature there, that he's drink anything that he gets, really.
Yeah, he does, but it's funny. I mean, the thing about, and a lot of people, and sorry, I'm probably going to cut this out, but I'm Hispanic, and so a lot of the stereotypes for us are that we're lazy and we drink and stuff like that. And I think it's funny. I mean, I'm not that sensitive about it, but
well, I think a lot of Scottish people are proud of the stereotype of being quite strong drinkers. As far as I've ever seen, I've got a couple of friends who are Scottish, and and they like their drink and they're happy and proud about that, really.
Nice. You know what? If it's going to happen anyway, might as well embrace it, right?
Exactly. It's cold up there, it's a bit bleak up in the Highlands sometimes. It's dark a lot of the time. Need a little bit of whiskey to cheer things up and make sure you get through the day.
Exactly. Yeah, I got to do something to keep warm.
Yeah.
But I love how he's visited by the spirit, and at first he's like, "Wait a minute, you're a really good guy. I don't know why I'm here," and that kind of it's like, why would he be there? I mean, did he expect to find a miser?
Yeah, he's found his way into the wrong house or something.
Or something like that. Yeah. He's like, yeah, but you're a good one. You're not like your ancestors, and
there's other misers around here I have to visit. Oh, you're such good compared to those lot.
So he's like, really? Have there been others? My ancestors are evil? Really? Show me. And he's like, oh yeah, check this out. And so he shows him, but I believe he shows him the protagonists, like the Edmund Blackadders of 2 and 3. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first vision from the past is from Blackadder 2, which is sort of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. So that would be Tudor era, and then Blackadder the Third, which is like the Georgian era, so late 1700s, early 1800s. But yeah, it's a chance for them to sort of, I suppose, get back out the old outfits and go back to the previous series, which is, I suppose, a bit exciting for them because every series was a different setting, but this gave them a chance to go back and revisit those characters, which again, for audiences at the time, I suppose, and people that love Blackadder, was quite, thrilling to see the character again, especially after you hadn't been with Blackadder 2, especially for a whole season. Mm-hmm. So to see him again was, a bit like a cameo or something. It was like seeing, a beloved character come back to the screen.
One thing I always that the British do so well is your Christmas specials. Honestly, even when a series is over, you'll have a reunion, and it'll be like a Christmas special or something like that. And it's just amazing. And I wish we'd had that here, honestly. We've copied you in like so many other things. Why not just copy that too? Because I would love to see what happened to some of my favorite characters and have another Christmas episode. And so I kind of regret not having that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, there are so many. I think it's just a bit of become a tradition here that you'd have a Christmas episode every year from certain television shows like Only Fools and Horses, mm-hmm. and lots of sitcoms would just have a Christmas episode if they were ongoing. And so then, when they'd get a chance to come back, shows like Vicar of Dibley and The Royal Family, mm-hmm. they do a Christmas episode because they were always so beloved, and everyone sat in front of the telly anyway, and it's that nostalgia feeling. Mm-hmm. And now in the modern age, you've had shows like
Gavin and
Stacey, exactly,
mm-hmm.
have sort of come back, and Outnumbered is sort of quite a big British sitcom that sort of come back and done a couple of Christmas specials. But yeah, I'd love to see, things like The American Office or Parks and Rec or those sort of shows come back and do a one-off Christmas party episode or something as a proper full episode.
As a full episode, yeah. I know they had that reunion at the beginning, or I guess middle of this COVID thing, where they kind of did a COVID episode and everyone was on Zoom.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It would be fun when, God willing, all this is over, that for them to just come together and do another Christmas episode. But
yeah, and you think there'd be lots of money in it as a just purely monetary financial thing for the studios, for the actors. It'd be a great moneymaker.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, especially because everyone wants that kind of, like you mentioned, that nostalgia and that feeling of, just togetherness and just remembering all your favorite characters. And so it's kind of a shame that they don't do something like that, but I don't know. I guess maybe they feel everyone's at Christmas parties or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we need a petition going.
It could be. Yeah. But so Robbie Coltrane, the spirit, shows Ebenezer, the Blackadder 2. And so it's Edmund Blackadder, and he's I guess he's Lord Blackadder at this point. And so he's he has this painting made. He spent like all his money on making this wonderful present for Queen Elizabeth, and it's like a wonderful portrait for her, and he's going to give it to her. And when he finally gets an audience with her, he just finds out that she has banned Christmas, and
she's all in a, she's like a stroppy sort of child, and she's having a strop like, I hate Christmas, and having a sort of go at her poor nanny or nurse, whoever it is that looks after her.
It's like, if I see anyone with a present, I'm going to have them executed. And there he is with that big painting, and So it's like, what's that? It's a window. it's such a great line. And so then he kind of plays it off. And so he quickly leaves. And now knowing that anyone executed or anyone with the present will be executed when he meets Lord Melchett, Stephen Fry, then, he immediately says, oh, I can't wait to see, please don't give her anything because, it's against the law now, and of course, knowing that whatever he says, he's going to do the opposite.
Reverse psychology trick. Yeah.
But you get another one of those great lines where he's like, it's something like, hold on, let me pull it up really quick. Here we go. Ah, Melchett, greetings. I trust that Christmas brings you its traditional mix of good food and violent stomach cramp. And then, of course, he responds with like, and compliments of the season to you, Blackadder. May the Yuletide log slip from your fire and burn your house down. And there's such this amazing bitter rivalry between them. And again, Stephen Fry is so good at sort of playing off against Rowan Atkinson there, and that sort of hatred for each other, but that's a very formal, old-fashioned British hatred as well. They're sort of acting because they're dignitaries, they're important people, they're privileged, they're rich, they speak very well, and but they just insult each other further ahead as well.
Exactly. It's all about getting that little extra and a little bit more power, a little bit more privilege, a little bit more wealth.
Yeah. So, of course, it's later on in the day, and the nanny has kind of convinced Queen Elizabeth, or the nurse, I should say, has convinced Queen Elizabeth that, you used to love Christmas. Why are you banning it? And so she's like, you're right. I was being silly. So they come in, and of course, Blackadder's kind of smirking, and, he knows that, haha, I've got Melchett now. And so he's like, I have this present for you. It's a crown. And she's like, oh, I love it. And, more presents. I'm going to give you tons of presents. What would you like? So she's going to elevate him to a higher rank, I suppose. And
give him, I think, a new lordship.
Castle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then even, and she says, anything else? He's like, oh, a saucy wife might be nice. So she of course, names someone right off the bat, and it turns out it's Blackadder's girl at the moment.
He's like, yes, that'll do. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, why don't you just, whip me, naked down the streets all the way to wherever. He's like,
I think it's all the way to Bath. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, oh no, that's too far. We'll stay at this closer point.
Yeah, we'll whip you to Aylesbury.
Aylesbury, yeah, that's what it was. Sorry, I don't know anything about
the British geography.
So yeah, he of course. And she's like, what have you got for me, Blackadder? And he's like, he's got nothing because he destroyed the painting.
Yeah.
Knowing that he would get him executed.
I think he actually punched Baldric through the painting.
Yeah.
Smashed it through his head.
So he's got nothing. And so she's like, well, I'm going to have you executed now. Sorry. And so any last requests? And so thinking fast, Baldric had actually gotten him a gag gift. It was like a fake death warrant, execution warrant for anyone, so he could play a trick on someone. And so he's like, oh, I've been big fans of yours. Could I get y'all's autograph and hold it with me before I die? And so she signs it, and then he gets Melchett's signature as well. He's like, oh my, oh, good. Dearest me. And she's like, what? He's like, well, this seems to be a death warrant.
And I like her little, she goes, oops. That's oops. That's it. Just sign this man's death. Oops.
And, well, is there a name on it? He's like, it's Lord Melchett. It's like, well, I guess you'll have to have all his stuff, and I can't go back on my word. I don't want to seem weak. I can't go back on my word now. So yeah, and so we fade back to the spirit in Ebenezer, and he's got like this big smile on his face. He's like, "Huh, how about that?"
And very admiring. Of
he's actually like, "Wow, you mean you can actually do stuff like that?" And he's like, no, but awful, of course, their behavior. Yeah, it's just awful." And but he's like, huh, that's very interesting that they can do stuff like that. And so the spirit's like, oh, you think that's bad? Watch this one. Or I think it says take a shifty at this one or something like that. And so then we get to, like you mentioned, Blackadder 3, and they've got the the wigs and
the Georgian very fancy clothes and
the foppish kind of thing. And Hugh Laurie is there, and so Blackadder and Baldric again are scheming to to trick him out of a bunch of presents. So
they have this very convoluted plan.
It is. I'm sure there's much easier ways to trick him into it. And so they're going to have, he's going to tell, the whole point is that he's going to tell him a story about an old woman and get him so emotional that he'll want to give the old woman everything. And Bodrick is supposed to dress up as the old woman. So they start playing charades first because they know he'll get bored, and then he'll ask for a story.
Which he does very quickly, and I love that he gets very confused very quickly.
Yes, he does,
at the game of charades. And I think he's to say 2 syllables, and he replies, 2 silly bulls? 2 silly bulls? What are they doing? And just starts getting very confused about the idea of a syllable.
He's
or
like,
a silly
no.
bull.
So, you have to name the specific type of book. Like if I were to open it up and, and then I did this, I might mean the Bible. He's like, I don't think there are any silly bulls in the Bible. It's another just great little gag that they really play off. And Hugh Laurie, of course, at this point, I'm so used to him being the uber genius, house, that whenever I see him play something else, it's very, very shocking.
Yeah, and again, especially a character that's so silly compared to House's, very serious type of humor, very, quite mean, quite harsh, quite a bit scary. And compared to this, when you see him, it's again completely the opposite. It's just this ridiculous, idiotic rich man.
But he does it so well that I believed him. It was great. So he starts telling him a story and about this poor little old woman, and she's got nothing, and he goes on and elaborates, and so eventually the George, it's Prince George, right? Prince George. Yeah. He's just crying and brought to tears. And so then when, the old woman comes in, he's like, oh, give her everything, give her all the presents. And, he's like, well, and of course, Blackadder's like, well, maybe I should shoo her away. He's like, no, give her it all. Okay, well, I'll walk her out just to make sure she doesn't steal the silverware. He's like, no, give her the silverware too, everything. It's like, and so as he's closing the door, he sees that the old woman has already gotten her stuff and gone. And so he's like, all right, Bodrick, where are you? And then he comes out and he's got nothing. He's like, oh yeah, I was just helping this old woman with all these.
This sweet little old lady out the door.
And so you can just see on his face, like, I should have known.
Don't trust Bodrick. Don't
trust
plan.
him. So, of course, he comes up with the idea that he's just going to go rob her later on. It's dangerous streets, and he'll just take it all. But it's just so funny how he's like, yeah, I should have known better than to put my faith in you. Sorry. But it's just another great thing where we fade back to the spirit. And at this point, of course, Ebenezer is really learning the wrong lesson now.
It's like rubbing his hands with glee almost with excitement. Yeah.
Fascinating. What's fascinating? Oh, the wigs. The wigs are great. He's like, so of course now the spirit's starting to notice that something is not quite right here, and he's kind of learning the wrong lesson. He's like, well, what'll happen if I were to go bad? What would happen to my, in the future? It's like, I think I should be going. I don't think I should show you that. And he's like, no, come on, please, just show me. So he finally relents and he shows him, and we get this crazy sci-fi, years in the future kind of thing.
Super sort of like, it's sort of like very 80s cheap budget sci-fi almost, the way it's sort of, cheap BBC budget that's sort of cobbled together, flashing lights and like a big empty room with curtains.
B-movie for sure, yeah.
Yeah, in a brilliant way.
It really is. And of course, all the costumes and everything, they've got those very futuristic, it's all silver for some reason.
Yeah,
it's
Flash
like
Gordon looking.
Exactly,
sort of stuff.
like Silver LeMay or something. And and so it's the Queen Asphyxia, which I love. It's just a great name. And her triple husbandoid.
Yeah, the triple husbandoid.
Yeah, and it's of course played by Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, and I think it was the nurse that plays the other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so they're summoning the general, and it's Blackadder. He's got long Howard Stern looking hair and
brilliant hair. I love that, like perm look he's got. I wish I could pull that off, honestly.
No, and I definitely can't. And yeah, he's got like the cloak, and it's, the fur and the spikes and everything, and the helmet that's like robotic. And so they're like asking him about how goes our war on the frontier, and because he's a general in their army, and so he's kind of leading them through their battles with the myrmidons and
the aliens, and it's all sort of gobbledygook words they keep throwing around. It's very C.S. Lewis almost, that sort of like made up sort of language, made up words of sort of future aliens. And obviously I think I had a lot of fun in the writer's room just chucking those names of aliens about.
Nibblepibblies or something like that.
Yeah, the nibblepibblies.
He's like, nope, you just made that one up. So she's like, what have you brought us for tribute? And he has this device, and of course they're all kind of making fun of him and they want to execute him. He's like, well, hold on, let me show you. So he activates it, and it like disintegrates the triple husbandoid. And so Queen Asphyxia is like, what happened? He's like, I demand that I'm going to be your king, your emperor, and you're going to marry me, and I'm going to be in charge of everything, rule it with the galaxy with you. She's like, oh, I thought you'd never ask. Ha 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 ha. And so after all this really melodramatic sci-fi futuristic stuff, we cut back to Blackadder and the Spirit, and again he's like, wow. So if I were to go bad, then my descendants would rule the universe, and of course we get a great line from Robbie Coltrane where he's like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't be happy. he's like yeah, it's a lot of work ruling the universe, and it's spiritual good, spiritual. It's not good for the spirit. And so
you can see he's losing it. You can sense he's losing the battle here. Yeah.
He's big time losing the battle. It's like, okay, well, what would happen to my descendants if I stay good? So we go back to the exact same scene, except this time the general is not Blackadder, it's Baldric, and Blackadder is his slave instead.
Yeah, and the outfit. Oh my! I remember when I was young. Yeah. When I first saw, Baldric come out in the outfit first, and then seeing Rowan Atkinson come out in that jock strap, completely naked apart from a very small pair of pants with his long hair and his skinny little frame. It's the funniest thing I saw in my life. As a 13, 14-year-old, when I first saw this, I think it was just the most hilarious thing I'd ever seen. It was just cracked me up so much. It still makes me laugh.
Oh, yeah.
As I see him in that outfit, looking so forlorn, and so, I can't believe I have to wear this in front of national television almost.
Oh yeah. And then Rowan Atkinson wearing it is just, oh man, it was like the icing on the cake. So right away he's like, wait a minute, no, I'm not going to be this guy's slave, forget it. So immediately he turns the corner, and so he wakes up Christmas morning, and he's like, oh, Baldric, look, I found there's something in my stocking,
I love this bit so much. I love it.
It is a great bit. He's like, I found something in my stocking. It might be for you. And he's like, what is it? It's a fist. And so he punches him in the face. He's like, it's a gift that keeps giving every year. And he just punches him.
Keeps hitting him. That sort of, again, very fake slapstick punching. Like you can tell he's punching to the side.
To the side, yeah.
It's so funny anyway. It just works. Baldric keeps getting knocked backwards.
And it's funny because, at this point, he only knows him as like the nicest man ever. So he still keeps, he's thinking like, oh, this must be some sort of, joke or jest or something.
Christmas joke, yeah.
And nope. He immediately, when Mrs. Scratchit comes back to ask for more things, he pretty much tells her, because she asks, I'm sure you have a little fowl for me, trying to get like some sort of bird or, turkey or goose or something. He's like, oh, I've always found you fowl, and not just a little. And then the same thing when the beetle with the orphans come.
The orphans come.
And he's like, well, they present him with like a tiny little pudding. Which I think they put like a sprig of holly or something in it.
One tiny little bit of holly. Yeah.
and so he's like slams the door in their face, and of course Baldric's like, "You're not going to let him go out into the world with nothing but a tiny little pudding." He's like, "Oh, you're right," and he opens the door and grabs it, and slams it in their face again. It's so great. Oh man, I was cracking up throughout that entire portion. It had me just literally.
And the transformation is just works so much. Seeing what it was like at the start. It's just like in the same way. Whenever I read Christmas Carol and I see that transformation from this horrible, cruel man into this lovely, kind, generous man, it makes me tear up. It makes me really sad. It makes me think about how wonderful Christmas is and everything. And this is exactly the opposite.
Exact opposite.
And but in a completely makes me crack up and makes me laugh out loud. It's just so ridiculous, that sort of change, how cruel he becomes, how vindictive. He's throwing insults around, he's slamming doors in faces, he shoves the holly into Baldric's face.
Yeah.
He just
in his mouth.
Doesn't care anymore. He's just perfectly evil.
And so he's I love it because his goddaughter Millicent and her fiance come, and so
is it Ralph? I think
that's what the name was. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it was.
He's known on the back of quite interestingly on the back of the DVD box.
Mm-hmm.
Millicent is known as Awful Screeching Woman, and
she was. Her laugh was terrible.
Her boyfriend fiance is known as the Giggling Ninny, is what they refer to him as in the sort of description of the characters.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love it because, he does giggle, but he insults them and they kind of don't quite get it right away. And so finally he's like, well, I hope you can support, her lifestyle. He's like, oh yeah, sure I can. And he gives him his wallet and there's like all this money in it. And he pretty much just keeps it.
Takes it, yeah.
And he kicks him out, which I love.
She starts bawling with her very annoying tears and laughter. And he starts crying as well, I think.
The ninny. So he goes to the back room, and during this time, the Queen and Prince Albert come back. They're like, where is Mr. Blackadder? We want to reward him, and all sorts of things.
Yeah, we've heard he's the kindest man in London, so we're here to give him, is it £25,000? £50,000, yeah.
And I think the title of Baron, I think.
Yeah, Baron of Blackadder.
And so it's so he's in the other room. He comes out, sees them, and he recognizes them from the night before, but he doesn't realize that they're actually, the Queen and the Prince. And so he just abuses them like crazy, just
starts tearing into them. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, no, we're the Queen and, and the Prince. And so he's like, oh, you mean, the pig and the pig. And
yeah. I think he says something like,
the pig, that's what it was.
Yeah, the Pig and the Prig, and the winner of the roundest woman in London award, and the winner of the daftest accent, dumpiest. Yeah, that's the word.
That's great. So I snorted. Excuse me. It's such a great bit there. Yeah, he abuses them. He doesn't believe them, and so he has Baldric with that money that he took from the ninny, has him buy like this huge turkey, and so he's sitting down to eat, and he's like, well, no, those were the Queen and the Prince. He's like, no, they weren't. They always leave their royal seal. He's like, oh yeah, they did. And he shows it to him, and it ends with him just kind of looking up like, oh, really?
That freeze frame. Yeah.
It's such a great bit, and it's such a great ending. And I really enjoyed this special. It was just something about it. It's charming. It not only is it inventive because it turns it on its head, but it really, you get a style of all the other bits. And so, as you mentioned, you get that nostalgia growing in with it. And, you're just these beloved characters that a lot of people grew up with. And then they watched them for all those years, and then they were back. And it was a really good special, and it was well acted, well written. Just very
a lot of fun, really. It's just
a lot of fun. Exactly.
A good fun time. It's funny, it's silly, it's slapstick. And I think you can get lots of different things from it. I think this is the case for some of the best comedy, that you can watch it as a kid or as quite young and enjoy the slapsticks and the punching and the silliness. And then you can watch it as an adult and get completely different jokes, on a different level, some of the ruder jokes and the more subtle little bits and things. Yes. And there were bits that even watching back, I hadn't noticed before. There's a bit where near the start where Prince Albert talks about being from Glasgow.
Oh,
I think he sort of pretends to be I'm from Glasgow, he says. And and he talks, and Blackadder says, oh, I love the Gorbals. And at the time I didn't know what and the Gorbals, I looked up the Gorbals is an area of Glasgow, which I didn't know until I was like, oh, what is the Gorbals actually, watching this back properly? Looked up, it's an area in Glasgow. And then, he's like, oh yeah, they're a lovely couple, the Gorbals, yes. I'll send my regards if I see the Gorbals.
Yeah, there was a lot.
That was a new joke for me. Yeah.
And then of course, several of the innuendos and things like that as well. That was just funny, but which the first time I saw it kind of passed me by. But as is the case with a lot of this style, especially when the writing and the delivery is so fast, you can miss a lot of these things. And just like you, I went back and watched it and got a couple other jokes. It's like, oh, okay, well, I like that now even better. But I gotta say, for sure, I think this is like this is probably going to be added to my Christmas canon. Honestly, it's
good. Yeah,
that good.
It's mine. Yeah, I watch it every single year. Every year, I have to sit down and watch. I usually do a sort of a double bill of this and Mr. Bean is my sort of Rowan Atkinson double bill of Christmas at some point.
Nice. Yeah, I could see how that would be a really good one too. Unfortunately, because my wife doesn't really get British humor and that dry wit, I'll probably end up watching this on my own, which is a shame because it's so funny, but
it is.
It is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, she really does like more of that Parks and Rec style.
Yeah.
So,
which is great as well.
It is, yeah. But sometimes I like a bit of elevated humor as well. So I have to ask, what would you say is your happiest memory of this special? Or if you can't pick a particular one, maybe just your favorite bit about it.
Well, I do sort of have quite a memory of watching this when I was a sort of a teenager, watching it with my dad. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it was one of the first, I think, one of the early shows when I was younger that me and my dad would watch together a little bit. Well, that Blackadder series 4, and then the Christmas Blackadder as well. And so, there's definitely a few Christmases in a row where I'd watch it. We'd sit down and watch it together. Nice. And so it was quite a nice little moment, that we'd both laugh at the same jokes or most of the same jokes, and sort of laugh at the same things. Whereas, otherwise, I like, when I was younger, especially, I like more maybe silly slapstick stuff that my dad thought was stupid and silly. Right. But this we agreed on, so we could sit down and watch this together at Christmas.
Nice. For me, I think it would probably be the first time I saw it, which was I think I was in junior high, and it was a friend of mine had it on. I think he had recorded it off the BBC, and so of course, it had the commercials in it and everything. And that was, it had to be, it was at John's house. I remember it was at John's house. And it was I just remember really laughing at it, even though I didn't quite understand it all at the time. I got most of the jokes, but, some of the historical part was just like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I didn't really pay any attention to it. But it was really great. And unfortunately, I lost track of it throughout the years because I didn't own a copy of it. And it wasn't something that I went to, to actually actively seek out, which is a shame because I think I would have been watching it all these years now if I had known. But oh well, I'm glad that I've rediscovered it now.
You've got it back now. Exactly.
Yeah.
Had it.
So that's probably mine there. But now we come to my favorite part of the show, which is a little segment I like to call Gag Me with a Spoon. So this is where we do our best impressions of our least favorite part of the episode. And as I mentioned before, it was really, really hard. So I'll let the listeners vote, and the winner will get a sticker unless I win, in which case I get nothing. But I still have yet to win, so I think you're fine. you're probably good right now. But yeah, I'll let you go first as a guest. Just kind of set up the scene for us, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so it was hard to decide on my least favorite bit, but I was deciding between the two. Well, the most annoying characters, basically the characters that annoyed me a little bit. And it was either Millicent or the Enormous Orphans were the two that sort of made me go, oh, these people are very annoying. And I thought I'd go for the Enormous Orphans with the Beadle. And it's when they come back at the end to see Blackadder, and they turn up at his door and sing him a Christmas carol. Which is a very odd version of a Christmas carol. So I thought I'd sing that Christmas carol for you.
Oh, yeah. I remember now. Okay, go ahead.
I've had to write it down. God bless Mr. B at Christmas time and baby Jesus too. If we were little pigs, we'd sing Piggywiggywoo. Piggywiggywoo. Oh, Piggywiggywoo. Wiggy-wiggy-woo. Oh, Piggywiggywoo.
That was great. That was really good. For me, because I had a hard time choosing, and I almost went with Millicent as well. But I realized I couldn't do it any justice. So I ended up going with Robbie Coltrane because I wanted to attempt to do his accent, and I'm going to fail miserably here. But at least you can laugh at me and say, "Oh, silly old Texan." So it's the spirit, and he's first visiting him, and he said, he mentions visions, how he gives them visions of everything. He says, well, it's all visions these days. We used to use black and white line drawings, but the visions are more effective.
Spot on accent there.
Yeah, right. Oh man,
I thought I was in Glasgow for a second there.
in the Garbles.
In the Gorbles, yeah.
So I will leave it up to you, listeners, and I'll put it on Twitter and all our social media, and you guys can vote and see which one of us has won and how badly I have lost. So, but on that note, G.I. Joe, they taught us that knowing is half the battle. What would you say the other half is?
I think the other half is don't insult the Queen. That would be the other half. And that applies today as well. Don't insult the Queen.
That's really good. Actually, that's almost exactly like mine, which is, if knowing is half the battle, the other half is being nice to undercover royalty so you can get a big wad of cash and a title. So we were thinking along the same lines there. Oh, man. Adam, it's been a lot of fun talking about this with you. But, what do you want to plug? Tell me about your show.
So, yeah, I am the host of Merry Britsmas podcast. It's been going for a couple of years now, but previously I've only been doing one episodes in sort of November, December, and it's a podcast that's all about British Christmas things because I listen to lots of Christmas podcasts that were all very American, which are all brilliant, but a lot of the stuff maybe I didn't know very well, or there was some stuff where I thought, I want to talk about British Christmas things like Blackadder and Royal Family and all those things that, were part of my childhood. And so I discuss Christmas television and music and traditions that are British. And I usually put out an episode each month on the 17th. And then November, December, I have some extra bonus episodes as well. And I also I've just started doing my World Cup of Christmas things on Twitter, voting for various British Christmas things. So I did a World Cup of Doctor Who specials last month, and now I'm doing the World Cup of Marleys for October.
Right on. And so they can find you at all social media.
I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all Merry Britsmas. Or I do have a website as well, which is www.merrybritsmas.co.uk.
Nice. Right on. Yeah, definitely check it out. It is a lot of fun, and he goes through a bunch of things that especially this American didn't know about. So, I highly recommend it. Definitely check out Merry Britsmas. And on that note, let me say thanks again for coming on. Thank
you for having me. It was brilliant, and I'd definitely love to do it again in the future.
For sure. Yeah, we definitely have to. And I'm going to end it by saying, well, yes, but in the Feeling Good Ledger of Life, we are rich indeed. So check us out on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're feeling as generous as Ebenezer Blackadder on Christmas Eve, leave us a review on iTunes. Not only does it help us reach more people, but you also get a free sticker. Now, don't forget to vote. Later, dudes.
It's Christmas!
Hello, this is Adam from Merry Britsmas. I am a Christmas fanatic from the UK who thinks that the world needs to know more about the traditions, telly, and music that helps make a British Christmas really festive. I look at everything from mince pies to Boxing Day to Wham to Slade to the Royal Family to Doctor Who. If you want to find out more about a British Christmas, or you are British and want a hit of nostalgia, check me out at Merry Britsmas.
And happy blooming Christmas to you and all.